In a previous episode, Nic and I interviewed each other. It was a great conversation, but a few questions ended up on the cutting room floor. Here are some of the outtakes we couldn't leave behind. I had
Absolutely.
another question that was a bit more about the specifics of assessments themselves now, about work samples, which makes a bit of a part of our life at the moment, our working life, you and I. So there's a growing focus, but certainly for us as we work on something along those lines of work samples or simulations as the gold standard of validity. So from a psych perspective, how valid are they really? And what are the trade-offs compared to more traditional assessments like cognitive or personality measures?
Great question. And yes, the front and centre of my mind a lot of the time at the moment. So
Yeah.
to answer the question around gold standard, they do have really strong validity. So in all of the sort of meta-analyses, etc., that look at, multiple validity studies, they always tend to fare really well. So there's no disputing that. And then as far as face validity, so that's, do candidates buy into them? Do they feel relevant? They tend to fare really well from that perspective as well, because the candidate is actually undertaking a task that in theory is relevant to the role that they're applying for. So they measure the actual task, which is a really compelling, activity for candidates and for people choosing assessments. They're not sort of, well, why have we not been doing this for years? Why have we not got more of them sitting on our shelves? Because they're not always an easy solution. So I think you talked about trade-offs. So some of the trade-offs include things like cost and time, scalability, scoring reliability. So they've traditionally been more difficult to develop because they're a bit more abstract, and how you score them is more complex. It often requires input from a human rater as well, and then you're getting into the issue of unreliability, so on and so forth. So there are trade-offs. Measures, traditional measures like your cognitive tests and your personality tests tend to be cheaper to develop, sometimes shorter, and they also are good predictors of job performance as well. So it's like, I guess for us it's thinking around, well, why are we now talking about work samples? I think it's because with the advent of AI and technology, it makes it possible for us to create realistic work samples that are far more scalable, far more cost effective. So we can now build in automated scoring, adaptive branching, we can use natural language processing, all of that great stuff, so that we can now simulate job tasks digitally, and that there's probably a sliding scale of how far you go with that, and balancing cost, predictive validity, face validity, and so on and so forth. But yeah, to answer your question, they're up there when it comes to validity. And over time, I think we're now finding ways to make them more accessible to more of our clients and partners.
I've been thinking a lot about, obviously the tech and how that supports the development of psychometric assessments and, the scalability that this tech, and as with all tech, it launches and then it gets commoditized, and those benefits we can feel for real, like as we implement those kinds of solutions. So it opens up a lot of opportunity, doesn't it? But one thing, obviously, we all know there's many conversations around AI at the moment. And I do see the opportunity in development of products and features of AI, but it's specifically related to psychometrics as it becomes more embedded in psychometrics or in hiring solutions generally, like HR tech. What do you think psychologists need to safeguard most? Fairness, explainability, or something else entirely?
I want to safeguard all of that, all of
Yeah.
the above. I don't want them
Making
to
you choose between them.
I think that's quite mean, asking me to choose between them.
Sorry.
I guess as psychologists, first and foremost, we've always been used to safeguarding fairness and validity and reliability. And I bang this drum on every podcast that we have where we've got the opportunity to. That is not going to go away. But obviously, in the world of AI, then they've got to sit alongside things like explainability, transparency, candidate privacy, all of those things do equally matter. I think explainability matters for the trust and the legal defensibility piece, but a model that's explainable but not fair or not valid is still a problematic model. So I'm going to sit on the fence on that one and say I want all of the above, and I'm not going to choose.
Anything else that you think? I mean, you mentioned additional reliability, your stalwarts, reliability and validity as alongside fairness.
Yes, I think also that sort of keeping the human in the loop as well. So when we're making nuanced decisions, we don't just rely on the robots to do that for us. And it's sort of recognizing, keeping on top of all of the guidelines and the legislation around AI as well. Which is why, we are seeing, people like me working far more closely with people like you and with engineers and with data scientists and with
Mhm.
AI experts. No one person can do this alone. It used to be the psychologist would develop a test and then get somebody to print the test for them, and it was job done. But there is just no way that we can operate in our silos
Mhm.
anymore, and it makes for a better overall product if we're all working and pushing in the same direction to achieve that and sharing our expertise to do that.
Yeah, fully agree. The benefits of that multidisciplinary approach and everyone bringing their different skills, like, it's it much more. I mean, selfishly for all of us, I think it's much more enjoyable as well to learn and work together and
I'm not going anywhere. That
understand
means you're
more
not getting rid of
of
me.
each other's expertise. This is blowing it out more broadly. Like, where do you think we've done a really good job outside the world of assessments at applying psychological principles in a way that helps people? So, whether that's technology and education or day to day life.
This is very ethical, but I'm going to share it anyway. I think I use the concepts of operant conditioning. So this is, do you remember the whole sort of rewarding the behavior that you want to see more of, um, regularly with my kids. So they're now 18 and 20. So I'll tend to offer to pay for dinner if they're willing to come out for me. And the more I do it, the more likely they are to join me again. So these principles can work at home as they do in the lab. And I'm pretty sure my kids aren't going to watch this. So I'm probably safe to share that.
Okay. I mean, are we talking Pavlov's dog here? Like, is that what you've done?
Thinking Skinner's rats, but
Oh, yeah, the
I'm not
rats. I
that
remember. I did
liking my
a
children's rats.
psychology AS level, so I think I remember that case study.
I think it
Oh,
was the,
brilliant.
the pressing the thing for food, wasn't it? So yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
not too many steps removed from that.
Yeah.
What have you learnt about introducing new assessment formats or AI features, for example, in organisations that are either very risk averse or perhaps highly regulated?
Well, I'm hardly the first person to say this, and we talked before about explainability, but to me, transparency is critical. Like, in the case of AI, there are way too many horror stories out there, particularly like poor experiences on one side and biased or unfair decision making on the other. So, as an HR tech supplier, I think we have to make sure we have explainability, transparency, and that we're, aligned to any necessary regulatory frameworks. And as we know, in the case of AI, that's really quickly evolving. And be clear and transparent about the benefits and limitations of these kinds of features or technology. In TA, especially, the tech is only as good as the process it sits within, I think. So making sure we have full knowledge of the client's use cases and goals is critical as well. So to help them understand whether a solution or a particular feature is the right fit, like, we talked before, like not one size fits all. Um, it doesn't benefit us to force some functionality, some jazzy new functionality that we've built onto a customer when it isn't the right thing for their process and it won't deliver the outcomes they need. So not because the technology, the feature that we built or the assessment is substandard, just because it's a square peg round hole and doesn't complement the process that
And they're
it's
just not
working
ready at
within.
that point.
And I think timing too is very important. So as we know, TA works in cycles, but often many cycles within one organization. So rollouts of new features and assessments need to be considered as part of the client's wider recruitment ecosystem, if I can call it that. Like, I think this actually helps. I think the industry for us actually helps in some ways or this cyclical nature, because usually within TA, you can find some time and something needs to be refreshed or reconsidered. Like, we were just talking at the top of this um, podcast about the skills landscape changing so quickly. So we actually
Mm.
end up having quite a few opportunities working with our clients to say, okay, well, you're reformatting what this role is doing or looking for, or this recruitment cycle. So at that point, we can look at the new features, we can look at potentially new assessments to start, enhancing their process. Um, and I've actually found that more often than not, the TA leads that we work with in organizations are very keen to continuously improve, because they recognize that. And the challenges that they face in attracting top talent and stuff make that a priority for them anyway. So if there are new things that enhance their candidate experience, or, a new
Mm.
assessment that's got better face validity or better predictability, they're going to be open to implementing it. And I think we said in the podcast before, for those that are really risk averse and potentially a bit, shall I say, stuck in their ways, or, have a lot of, regulatory issues that they've got to work around. Like, I think we said before, starting small is usually the best approach. Like I know you are heavily involved in piloting with our clients, like piloting a new feature or an assessment first to make sure it's the right fit, be intentional about what you're expecting. And we had Craig on, our customer success director, recently, and he said, make sure you've got a baseline against which you can measure to make sure what the improvements are, that you're looking for. And I think all of these things would build confidence for a risk averse or regulated organization to be able to
Yeah.
make a positive change and adopt new technology or features or assessments.
Saying eat the elephant one bite at a time or something along those lines.
Something like
Just
that.
start small. Start small. And I guess it's for us, it's to make it as easy for our customers as we possibly can to take on new features or to understand new assessments and make them easy for them to access and use and understand the benefits of them, which I think is what you started
Yeah,
your answer.
exactly. And that's the product thing. What problem are you solving for them with this feature or with this assessment?
Mm.
How does it, yeah, what does
Yeah,
it bring?
yeah, and it's not just going here. We've got, we've got this new feature.
Yeah.
It's explaining why that new feature is going to be useful to them and why not to be fearful of it.
Mhm.
Okay, so one last question. Sort of getting my revenge on you, really, because you just asked me about how I use psychological principles outside of work. Where do you look for ideas or inspiration outside the world of assessments, whether that's perhaps from other tech products, from general design practices, or even completely different industries?
Okay. Well, this is a really like product answer, but like everything's a product. So everywhere, like at everything. We're all, I mean, obviously with tech, our platform is tech. We're all using tech every day. So um I have to say, I do notice if I use a particularly nice intuitive interface of anything, whether it's, your streamers on TV, or I don't know, a menu ordering experience when you go to a restaurant and you go and browse through, like, there's small things that you can pick up from pretty much any daily experience you're having. Um, Packaging. There's so many, in and out of tech, there's so many things. I think I can be a bit boring about product and notice if something's been packaged or positioned really well, or you know I think a key attribute of product people is that they are naturally curious. So I think you take it, you don't take anything at face value particularly, and you look beyond. And so I would say I look everywhere for inspiration, but I think mostly, especially as we're building candidate experiences, it's that tech experience. So many marketing sites do so well in terms of design and things like that. I think we could really learn a lot. I think we've spoken in previous podcasts as well that maybe sometimes the science part of the psychometrics, like you said, back in a previous life, people did hours of batteries. They certainly
No,
batteries of tests. They certainly weren't thinking about the user experience at that
no,
point in time.
no.
And I think the industry is definitely caught up now, but for a long time they didn't. And I think it's just that user centric mentality and thinking about that in experiences. So anything that you experience, you go to, I think we've had team socials at places like Flight Club. Like, so some really nice things that, you know, you think about that, where you can really appreciate when something has really been built about around the user experience. And I think, but yeah, there's no limit to you. It's annoying if you can't really switch it off sometimes. Actually, that's
I
the
was going to
worst
say, I
thing
bet you
about
would
it.
enjoy to watch TV with.
Yeah, it is a little, yeah. But everywhere is the simple and probably obvious answer.
A day out shopping with Caroline
Yes.
Fry. Quite different to a day out shopping with anyone else.
Thanks for hanging out with us on The Score. If you enjoyed this conversation on all things psychology and product, don't miss what's coming next. New episodes drop every 2 weeks on YouTube, Spotify, or wherever you get your talent acquisition insight.